Welcome, I'm Justin Walter.
And I'm Evelyn Rudy.
And this is Santa Monica On Stage, where we talk about the people and venues that make the city of Santa Monica the cultural destination for the performing arts.
On today's show, we'll chat with our friends at Highways Performance Space. Now celebrating their 25th anniversary, Highways is a hub of experimental work across several disciplines.
Then it's time to tune the orchestra. We have professional violinist and composer Robert Anderson here to talk about Elemental Strings, a youth organization that teaches kids classical music.
I've seen them perform, and they are true professionals, some as young as 8 years old.
Wow. Well, let's get started.
They are bold and unpredictable, challenging audiences to create progressive change through performance. We're thrilled to have Highways Performance Space back to talk about the intersection of art and politics. Leo Garcia, it is wonderful to have you back with us again.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be back.
Difficult to get so much into such a short interview because we, of course, want to find out more about Highways and its 25th anniversary, but we want to find out more about you, too, because you're such a fascinating person.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to start with a sort of a personal question. I know that you have been mentored by someone at some point in your life. And I'm always curious as to how mentorship comes about. Do you pick them? Do they pick you? And how does that influence you as an artist?
Mentorship, my mentors, there were two. I mean, one is a woman named Maria Irene Fornes, who is a great American playwright. And it came about by accident. I mean, I just submitted a work and she invited me to work with her. So she was very inspiring and she changed the way I thought about the work that I was doing. And I really just, she became my mentor because I loved what she was doing, her point of view, her perspective, her ideas. It was original and I just wanted to learn from her. And the other was a man named Mitch Walker who explores the unconscious. He's a Jungian therapist, actually. And he helped me to sort of mediate or relate consciously to the unconscious, which was a way of serving both myself and the work that I do. And both of those teachers had the same ideas, but they had different names for it. So I was attracted to understanding what was going on unconsciously, and they helped me understand it consciously. So that's how they became my mentors.
So how did those lessons you learned then influence how you pick shows to produce for Highways?
Well, I'm interested in artists who have an original thought, original idea, people with a point of view, people who are thinking consciously about what's going on inside of them and with other people and in their communities. You know, people who ask questions, like, you know, if it's for me, when I was writing plays, I was interested in Leopold and Loeb, and I wanted to know what was it that Leopold and Loeb did and why did they do it. So those are the people that I'm looking for, people who have a question and they're seeking answers.
Well, I have a question, and I'm seeking an answer.
All right, that's right. Would you like a part? Would you like to work with me?
Of course, I would love to work with you. You recently produced 10 Minutes is 2 Hours with Patrick Kennelly.
Yes.
And what was that all about?
10 Minutes is it 2 hours? Is a essay documentary film that we shot in South Sudan. And what that was about was one of our funders, one of Highways funders, was interested in working with both Patrick and myself. So he invited us to participate in this project, and he just wanted to know what was going on in South Sudan. So I managed and produced the project, and Patrick directed it. So we flew them to South Sudan, and we took very small cameras, sort of stealth cameras, because you don't want to carry a lot of equipment around in South Sudan. And only 3 of us could go because in South Sudan, you can't travel with more than 3 from any one organization because you fly in country through the United Nations. They're the ones who actually manage the flights. So we were just documenting without any real intention what was going on in South Sudan. And it's very complicated. You know, there's a lot of religious and tribal conflicts that are going on there. And so that's what it is. It's a 10-minute film that has been picked up and has a distributor, and actually it's going to video on demand. So that's kind of what it's about.
Great.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you're seeking progressive change through your art and what you're doing with Highways. So what are some examples of audiences taking a step towards change or making a change in their community or in the world in general?
Progressive change can be very subtle, I think. And what I think progressive change is when you invite a community into your space and they have the time and the space to explore work and to invite their community into our space and have a dialogue, a critical dialogue about the work that they're presenting. And so change can happen from within the individual who is creating the work, and it can also shift an audience's point of view. So it can be as subtle as just them having the opportunity to explore the work and then taking it to their community.
And Highways is giving that opportunity, providing it.
Highways provides that opportunity. We present new works 50 weeks out of the year, and we work with different communities. We work with communities that are not necessarily represented on the main stages, but...
what are some examples that you've had in some of your shows?
We work with the gay, lesbian, bi, transgender communities, the Latino communities, African American, South Asian, any community that is looking to create new work and actually has a community, people who reach out and are serving their communities. So is that what you meant when you asked me which communities?
Definitely.
Those.
So I want to pull it back to you personally now and see how what you do and how you studied and learned and developed and grew, how that connects to Highways. You had, I think, a couple of influences as you were developing as an artist, Shirley Temple and Teatro Campesino.
Yeah.
So how do the two of those both affect your work and your point of view?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm from a small community in Colorado, just north of New Mexico, a little town called Conejos, which has like 5 little houses and a church. And we grew up, and I lived in a convent that the sisters had moved out of. And my father was a teacher, so we got to live in the convent. But I used to have to walk a mile to go to school.
One of those walk a mile to school
It's true,
stories.
man.
We've heard those.
So, and on my way, I somehow had seen a Shirley Temple movie, and I really thought I was going to be discovered and pulled out of that sort of place, because it was just the mountains and dusty roads, and you know. And Shirley Temple was I saw her on TV and I fell in love with her, and I kind of understood what she was going through, and I wanted to be discovered, you know, the way Shirley Temple was, and taken away to some Park Avenue apartment and sing and dance my way to being, you know, somebody else than who I was. And at the same time, my father was very socially conscious, and he worked with like the farm workers. One of my jobs, for example, was to recruit the farm workers' children to offer them the possibilities of college, and what you know. So I'd recruit them and take them through the process of how to maybe go to school. But while I was doing that, I found a book called it was a red book, and it was by Teatro Campesino, and what it was a series of these little one-act plays. And so, and I was like 15 at that time, and I started to develop works around guerrilla kind of performance. So those are 2 of my influences, I guess, just by accident, you know, watching a Shirley Temple movie, and then
Amazing where it has brought you, and how influences change or support things that you end up doing with your life.
Yeah.
It's the 25th anniversary. Do you guys have any special performances for that?
Right, we have about 6 months of special performance, a season of 25th anniversary celebrations, our Silver Jubilee. So we're bringing some old school performance artists and bringing new artists. And for example, we're bringing back Barbara T. Smith, who is a performance artist from the 50s and 60s, actually the 60s, what am I saying, 50s. And she's mentoring another artist, so they're sharing an evening. A lot is going on, so visit www.highwaysperformance.org and take a look. But yeah, presenting new works and all celebrating our 25th anniversary. So there'll be food and festivities for the next 6 months off and on.
Awesome. So in addition to being the artistic director, which is what you are, your title, you do so many other things. And how do you balance it all? And which are your favorites, if any, the different aspects of theater and politics and performance art?
You know, I just produced a film actually while I was doing it, and the reason I do other things while I'm doing this job is to keep myself involved and interested and excited about my own life. We just shot a film that Patrick Kennelly, my co-director, wrote called Excess Flesh, which deals with body dysmorphia, and that interests me because it's topical and it's the way it was written was really quite fantastic. And it's a film that's sort of a hybrid of forms. It's a romantic comedy, a psychological drama horror film. So all of that kept me interested. Yeah. The point for me is just to keep working and keep asking the questions that I have and looking for the answers. So I'm seeking the answer.
I think that what you're doing is awesome.
Thank you.
I really think Santa Monica is lucky to have you and to have Highways. 25 years, it's very rare, very, very rare, and you're not sort of just hanging on by your fingernails, although financially we always are, but you've made such an impact in the community. And I hear so much, and people who want to work with you and people who have worked with you, and it's really, really very exciting. So we are very excited to have had you with us, and we hope we will bring you back again soon.
I'll come back. Just keep asking. I'll be here.
We will.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We will be back with Robert Anderson and Elemental Strings.
Discover 30 years of opera in Santa Monica. Discover the Verdi Chorus.
Elemental Strings gives an incredible opportunity for musical growth to children from the 3rd to 5th grades. Their hands-on approach has created some extraordinary musical talent over the last decade, and today we're joined by their composer-in-residence, Robert Anderson. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here.
So you are a professional violinist. So what made you go into this career path when you decided to enter it?
You know, it's hard thinking back to to find the specific moment that I decided I could never put the violin down and that I was going to just play for the rest of my life. But you know, at some point in our musical development, that has to happen, or everyone else just puts down the instrument. You know, I talk to a lot of people who have said, you know, I played violin back then or cello back then, and so I've thought a lot about that. And you know, I think that there's just moments in our musical lives, even as children or as young adults, where we really feel like we all of a sudden connect to the instrument, or we connect to music in a certain way. And I had a moment like that playing in an orchestra one time, playing a certain piece. I had finally advanced enough to a level where I could play, you know, real pieces by real composers. And I just had that feeling. I just knew that music in general, and violin in particular, was something that I was going to have to be a part of my life from that point on.
So why the violin? Who introduced you to it? How did you get started on the violin specifically?
Well, that's a good question. My mother is an amateur piano player, and she started me on piano at age 5. And you know, just like a lot of kids, it just was not cool to do something that my mother did. For one thing, you know, practicing was awful because you know, she was lording over my shoulder. You missed a note. I know how to play piano, and you're missing a notes there. So within a year, I decided to give that up and switch to violins. For some reason, I wanted to switch to violin. I have no idea why. I don't even know where I saw a violin, but I think I thought that it was probably the most different possible instrument from piano, and in many ways, I was right.
You mentioned about practicing, and I know I learned instruments when I was young, and I loved to play, but didn't like to play the minute somebody was standing over me and saying, you have to practice this, you have to get this right. But I know the kids at Elemental Strings, because I've seen them play and I've seen them rehearse, seem to love to play and love to rehearse. What's the magic? What do you do as a teacher and as a mentor and as an example? What's the process that turns them on so much?
Well, you know, like I said, first of all, I think it's about finding a way to connect the students with the music, with the art or with the instrument. And even from the earliest stages, you know, beginning students have the right and the ability to be artists and creative artists. And I think we forget that in particular in the string world with instruments that are so challenging to play, that takes so much discipline and rigorous focus and practice, even for kids at a young age, to advance. And if all we experience is that time in the practice room where it's, you know, the timer's on and we're trying to learn that scale or trying to play in tune, it's hard to connect with the music, with what we're doing. I think at Elemental Strings, it gives students at an unusually young age, you know, just starting out, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, the opportunity to play in groups, to connect with peers who also play from throughout Santa Monica, to play in small groups, chamber groups, and to make music together. And I think through this sort of group collaborative music making effort, I think the students connect in a way that they may not have otherwise done just taking private lessons or just playing in their school classes.
Neat. Now, when you talk about making music, you actually make some music of yourself. You recently had a daughter. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And you composed a piece about your daughter, Lydia, I believe, correct?
I did. It's called Lydia, as you may have guessed. It is my 5th composition for Elemental Strings. I've been so honored, and I've really had a great time writing a piece for the last 5 years for the kids to perform. That process is a wonderful joy and challenge. It's a little bit easier to just write anything I want and then, okay, professionals go play whatever I write because professionals can play anything. Rather, for the students, I'm faced with the challenge of creating something that, you know, is hopefully fun for them, hopefully interesting, hopefully educational and has some point to it, but also has a musical statement that I am inspired by and that I think is valid. And of course, with the birth of my daughter, my first child, it was a very intense and exciting and moving moment and stage in my life. And in the fall and during the winter break is when I was putting this piece together. He was born in December, and I was just really blown away, as I'm sure a lot of parents have been in the past, by the little hands and the little feet. And I searched for ideas and for inspiration for these compositions, and the 5 fingers, the 5 toes, I decided that I was going to write a piece in the 5/4 time signature. And so it's a pulse, it's a musical feeling that's very unusual overall, you know, and in music in general, it's fairly unusual, and certainly for kids at this age. They have music that's very regular, typically 4/4 time or 2/4. And so I knew that it was going to present a challenge to the students, but also be very interesting. And then as I worked this melody out that came to my head, it just fit perfectly into that meter, and I'm really happy with the result. The kids performed it back in March, and it was just such a touching moment and such a really, really heartfelt performance by the kids, and I was just so happy about that.
When you taught it to them, when you shared it with them, did you also share where it came from, about the fingers and the toes and how the 5/4, how
You
that all
know,
came together?
Each of the pieces that I've written for the group have some sort of story behind them. This one was, of course, the most personal, probably. But I like to kind of save that for later, for maybe when they've learned the piece or after we've worked on it for a little while. And in a way, it's sort of, to me, I feel like it gives them a different perspective. Okay, now we've worked on this, now we kind of get it. and then I explain to them what the inspiration was. So I sort of keep it like a punchline, and I save it for a little bit later. Then of course I let the parents know at the concert, explain a little bit about that, and it's such a treat. The Josephine, the director of Elemental Strings, allows me to conduct and rehearse the piece, and I'm not much of a conductor, but it's fun to do. It's fun to get up. Such a meaningful part of my role in Elemental Strings.
So 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders can participate. What happens after they leave the 5th grade? Do they stay involved, or where do they go?
Yeah, there's a lot of different options after the 5th grade. But the really unique thing about Elemental Strings is that it fills this niche for the students of that age, where there aren't a lot of youth orchestras in the community or other options for them. It gives the students a chance to play together. Once they get into 6th, 7th, 8th grade, there are a lot more community orchestra options, youth orchestras, Santa Monica Youth Orchestras, there's Los Angeles Youth Orchestras, and students often participate in that. Also, when they get to middle school and high school, the orchestras, certainly at John Adams and at Lincoln Middle School, are very large and very strong, and the students are able to, we sort of train them to be a part of those programs.
So you give them a great foundation to get into those programs.
Elemental Strings does do that.
And do they ever come back and help out a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a mentor program in Elemental Strings where that's been going for the last few years, where students, former Elemental Strings participants, come back, mostly I believe they're middle school students now, and come back and they help. They assist us teachers, they coach the students, they give them little pointers, show them how to do things. And that's a really neat way that we circle back and we get to see the students. They come back and I barely recognize them now. They circle back and they get to see what it's like from the other side. They sort of become helpers, teachers themselves.
That's wonderful for them, and I think probably very exciting for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to have someone closer to their own age who can sometimes even explain to them in a different way.
I think so. I think even just the fact that the middle schoolers come back and they volunteer their time to participate in this organization shows the health of the organization. It shows they want to give back. It shows they want to still be a part of something that they've aged out of. They want to still be there.
So we are now going to pretend to be 3rd and 4th graders.
Uh-oh.
I
And
see
you
your
have
violin.
your violin.
I sure do. I
So-
sure do.
If we were just on our first class with you and you were explaining about the violin and playing something for us, what would you do?
Okay, so some of the first things that students need to know about this, there are a lot of challenging hurdles to get over for that first time beginning student. One of which is just how to hold it. I've always thought that when I watch other people play the violin, it feels very natural to me. I've been doing it for a long time. When I look at other players, I think, man, that just looks unnatural. So even just the way we hold the instrument up on our shoulder, it just
on the side of your face.
The side, people who play violin a lot get marks here, and it looks like a very, it's like you really suffer for your art there, right? But just getting the instrument up and being able to hold it in the right place. You see people with less experience, having trouble. Or we do a lot of walking around the orchestra and bringing instruments up like this, right? But you don't want it too high. Too high? No, not at all. That doesn't really work, right? And one very helpful technique is getting in front of the mirror with the instrument. We get in front of the mirror, we look in the mirror, and if something looks odd, it probably isn't right.
So you want to look cool, not awkward.
I want to look cool, not awkward. So first step is how to hold the instrument. Next step, learning the names of the strings. Violins and violas and cellos have 4 strings. Mine is a little bit odd. It has 5.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a hybrid instrument today. But learning the names of the strings. Learning how to pluck the strings. In Italian, we call that pizzicato, right? Plucking the strings. Then usually you'll see beginning players have marks similar to like frets on a guitar, because it's a little bit abstract, or just a black piece of wood in terms of where do we put our fingers. Students have to learn where to put your fingers. Now, I'm describing this in just about a minute or two. It takes about a year.
This is a whole class.
Yeah, you don't want to get your hopes up, right?
The abridged version.
A lot of stuff. Holding the bow is a challenge, right? We have 2 completely different things in either hand, unlike some other instruments. Learning how to hold the bow, how to pull the bow in a straight line so we don't have, this sort of thing. Trust me, I'm air bowing now, but this wouldn't sound good if I was actually putting the bow on the string.
So what is the ideal posture, look, and sound that we should hear?
We were, oh my
Let's
goodness,
see it.
I'm going to,
Let's hear it.
I'm honored that I get to represent
I'm waiting.
the ideal
I've been
violinist.
waiting.
So I'm going to play a little bit, if you don't mind, of the melody of Lydia.
I was
the
going to
song.
just ask if you
Yes.
would do
And,
that.
and while playing that, I'll demonstrate the perfect position and tone, hopefully.
Great.
Hopefully.
Take it
and
away.
With Lydia, just to explain, it has that 5 count. So when you hear the melody, you're going to hopefully be able to count to 5 over and over, and it'll feel very natural. So it's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Look at this. Okay, instruments level, flat, check. Bow hand, check. Lydia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1. So again and again, it's like a lullaby, actually. Thank
So
you.
beautiful.
Thank you very
That was
much.
beautiful. And when Lydia gets older, she will be so honored and
Yes.
so thrilled.
I can't wait. People have asked me, did she come to the concert? Well, she goes to bed at 5 p.m., so no, she still hasn't come to a concert, hasn't heard her piece yet, but I can't wait, like you say.
And I'm sure there will probably be more pieces that you'll compose about Lydia.
I'm sure this is the
Impacted in your
first of
life.
many.
Yeah. So, well, it's been a pleasure having you here. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. So we'll be right back with Santa Monica on Stage.
Music is such an integral part of the world of life, the rhythm of life. I know when I was in school, we had music day once a week, and we got to play the auto harp and the wood block and things. What about you? What was your
The furthest
musical?
I got was the recorder, Marietta Little Lamb, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
No violin?
No violin. I wish we would have had something like elemental strings because I would have actually tried it. You know,
Yeah.
friends' pianos I would play, but I don't really have a musical bone in my body. Whereas I'm sure you played a lot of instruments.
Yeah, a lot of different ones, but I think elemental strings it's something special.
Yes.
Because as he was saying, they actually get to perform when they're very, very young with other kids instead of just the practice.
Yeah.
And the mentoring with the older kids.
I love that.
And the mentoring at Highways as well. That I think mentoring is again something that many cultures have more of than we do.
And a lot of times we can point out specific people in our lives who have impacted it and got us on the trajectory we go. So who's someone in your life that's been a good mentor?
I had Ted Roeder, who was the founder of Santa Monica Playhouse, and David Winters, who was a choreographer,
Nice.
and my father, who
Great.
was my coach and director. What about
I
you?
love that. I had a teacher, Miss Kipp, in freshman year of high school. I joined the speech team, and joining that, it impacted my life and wanting to go into public speaking and doing performing and kind of hosting and all that sort of stuff. So I loved. Shout out to you, Miss Kipp. Thank you.
Yay. Something that we didn't talk about during our interview with Leo at Highways, they have the AIDS floor, and it is an awesome thing.
It's great.
That anyone can come, and if they want to honor an artist who has passed on, they can write their name on the AIDS floor.
And it's really neat. I mean, we just scratched the surface on what he has going on over there at Highways with art performances, but then even like the floor stuff in art that is just there that you can go check out as well. It's great.
Amazing. What wonderful things we have
Wonderful.
here in Santa Monica.
I know, I love it.
That's our show for today. Every week we're continuing our journey towards learning more about the arts groups that make Santa Monica's cultural world so rich.
We look forward to seeing you next time as we introduce you to a few more of our friends here at Santa Monica on Stage.